This is the OPPO Reno13 Pro. And as with most phones in the Reno line, this one has a specific focus, which is to be a flagship killer. But is it really? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be testing in today's Day in the Life to see if this is one of the best value phones you can get today and you should buy it, or if it falls a little bit flat. It is currently 8:57, our budget percentage is at 100%. Let's get into this Day in the Life. So we have a pretty busy day today. Meeting in the morning, lecture after that, and then a tutorial after that, so got a lot of things to do. So let's get going. Okay, so it's now currently 10:10. Our battery percentage is at 95%. And we're gonna take a look at the cameras on the Reno13 Pro. We got a 3.5x telephoto camera, up from 2x on the last Reno 12, along with the main wide sensor, which has actually been increased in size, so it should take better photos with more light and a bit more bokeh. And we have the 8-megapixel ultra-wide camera, which isn't that great, but at least you have that option. But let's take a few photos and see how the Reno13 Pro does today. And we have my friend Joe here to model. Where are you going? Alright, let's take a few photos. Starting off with the main camera, the 13 Pro does a great job at capturing a wide dynamic range with great colors and details. Joe is well exposed, and overall the photos are natural and not over sharpened. We can also crop into 2x for a tighter shot, which looks great as well. Moving over to the dedicated telephoto lens, the higher zoom allows for a more nicely compressed shot, with the background more blurrier even without portrait mode on. Details, dynamic range and colors are well managed here as well, and matches the quality of the main camera very nicely. The ultra-wide isn't too bad either, with a wide dynamic range. However, it is 8 megapixels only, so the resolution does suffer when you look closely at it. Portrait mode is usually a feature that the Reno line focuses on, but for some reason, the photos taken using this mode aren't anything amazing. Joe's hair looks a bit frizzy with the cutouts, but if you get the angle right, it can look nice. Selfies also look great thanks to the 50 megapixel resolution and has a pretty good dynamic range as well. Videos have been improved and now can shoot up to 4K 60, which is a very nice upgrade. However, it only works on the main camera, but I must say I'm pretty impressed by the quality of the video shot here. It's much improved over the Reno 12 Pro. Altogether, the cameras on the Reno13 Pro are very nice, with a great pair in the main and telephoto lens and much improved video quality. The 8-megapixel ultra-wide could do with an upgrade, and 4K recording would be nice on the other two sensors, but other than that, not too much to complain about. The cameras deserve a solid B+ grade. So, the Reno13 Pro has a pretty decent camera system. It's not the best, but it's definitely a big upgrade over last year's model, and I'm pretty happy with the system here. Shout out to Joe for modeling again. But yeah, let's keep going on with this Day in the Life. Okay, so now it's currently 10:54, battery percentage is at 92%. Let's talk about the display on the Reno13 Pro. So taking a look at the display on the Reno13 Pro, it's actually the biggest one I've ever put on a Reno phone before at 6.84 inches. But the good thing about this phone is that it has some really slim bezels, so it doesn't actually make the phone feel that much larger than last year's Reno 12 Pro. In terms of specifications, we get an AMOLED display up to 1 billion colors, which is awesome for watching movies, content and scrolling, with HDR10 plus notification of course. It also has a 120Hz refresh rate, so everything looks pretty smooth and silky on here, but it isn't LTPO technology, so it only refresh between 60 to 120Hz, which is alright, but not quite flagship level. It also does have a pretty high pixel density, 450 pixels per inch, which is a pretty big upgrade over last year's Reno 12 Pro, with a 2K resolution, which is really nice. Now let's talk about the brightness of the phone here. So the main issue that I have with the Reno13 Pro's display is that it doesn't get that bright. It can only get up to 1200 nits in peak brightness or 800 nits in high brightness mode, which isn't that good in 2025. It's a little bit hard to see in direct sunlight, which is a bit of a bummer, and a lot of other phones, especially this price range like the S24 FE or the A56, can display at higher brightnesses like 1900 nits, so it really feels like the display here could do with a bit more of a brightness boost. But overall, the display here is very high-end and very close to a flagship display, so I'm happy to give the Reno13 Pro's display an A- grade. Anyway, I'm gonna go head off to my class. Let's get going. Alright, so it's now 2:07, our battery percentage is at 74%. Let's talk about the performance on the Reno13 Pro. So the Reno13 Pro is actually equipped with the Dimensity 8350, which is basically a slightly overclocked version of the 8300. And so far, the performance has actually been really solid one here. It also has 12GB of RAM, so multitasking, floating windows, and switching between different apps, relaunching has been pretty smooth on here, and I haven't had any issues. In fact, I feel like the performance here has actually been really solid compared to other Renos that I've tested in the past. Like last year's Reno 12 was severely underpowered, and this one is definitely a lot more solid. It definitely feels like it fits the price bracket a lot more better, which is great to see. And combine that with the improved and much larger vapor chamber, which is the largest of any Reno phone, it's almost on par with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, the flagship chipset from a couple years ago. And jumping into gaming, Genshin Impact can be run at high graphics with 30 FPS or 60 FPS in fact, which is something very unusual for a Reno phone, which doesn't usually have any focus on gaming. So having some really good gaming on the Reno13 Pro has been quite a good deal. And also, it doesn't overheat that much either, thanks to that new vapor chamber. So altogether, the performance here has been very good, and I'm actually very pleased with this phone. It feels pretty much like a flagship phone, and I'm happy to give the OPPO Reno13 Pro an A- grade for its performance. But anyway, I've got to go to the tutorial, which starts now, so let's get going.
Guess I'm the man, right? It's all in my hands, right? Don't need a mirror, cause I'm seeing clear with the person who stands, right?
On 514, our battery percentage is at 62%. Time to go home.
Get what it please, every single situation. Guess I'm the man, right? It's all in my hands, right? Don't need a mirror, cause I'm seeing clear with the person who stands, right? I just want eyes on me, ain't no time for conversation. Get what it please.
Okay, so if you're wondering how good this car shots, this is thanks to Telson's car mount or magnetic mount, which is perfect for getting these shots. This magnetic mount is super useful because it attaches to pretty much anything with a super strong magnetic grip, and it's also super easily adjustable, so you can put it to GoPros, to smartphones, to cameras. Everything fits on here, and it's super easy to use with the 3.5mm frame. If you want to take a look at the Telson magnetic mount, check the link in my description. Let's go get some dinner. Alright, so it is now currently 7:34 and our budget percentage is at 48%. Now let's talk about the design, the features, and the software of the Reno13 Pro. Reno13 Pro's design is pretty premium, and I must say this is probably the best design they've ever come out with. And if you get the purple color, you get this nice butterfly effect on it. It's not for everyone, but if you don't like that, you can get the black option instead. Now, it also has IP69 water and dust resistance, which is actually really nice for a phone of this price. Design is definitely a focus of the Reno13 Pro, and I really like it. On the features side, we do get Aqua Touch, which is great so that you can actually use the display even when the phone is wet, which is a really handy feature, especially if you're in the rain. It also does come with an optical fingerprint scanner, and it also has 80-watt fast charging, so charging is super quick on this phone. It also has the O motor, which is a great haptic engine, having the same haptic motor on the more expensive 5X series. Much improved over last year's Reno 12, which did feel pretty cheap and tacky. And finally, on the software side, we get ColorOS 15, which is based on Android 15, and you do get some AI features. However, the long-term support isn't quite as good as the 5X series, so you can expect about 3 to 4 years of software support. So altogether, the features, software, and design is pretty premium and pretty nice on the Reno 13, and it feels pretty close to the flagship line of phones, just without the software support. So I'm happy to give the Reno 13 Pro's design, software, and features an A- grade. Alright, now I'm going to work on my assignment, and I'll talk to you guys later to see how the battery performance does at the end of the day. Let's keep going. Alright, so we've pretty much reached the end of the day. I've just finished my assignment, and also, my friend Xiaowei just sent me a photo. What does it say on it? Subscribe to Upwards. Still pretty unbelievable that we managed to get to 20k, and all glory to God. It is now 11:10 and our battery percentage is at 31%. So let's take a look at the battery performance to see how the Reno 13 Pro has done throughout the day. So the Reno 13 Pro has had a screen on time of 6 hours and 2 minutes, and our battery percentage is still at 31%. So the Reno 13 Pro's battery life is actually pretty insane, and is one of the best battery lives I've ever had on any smartphone. And not to mention that I had set the refresh rate to high throughout the whole day, so if you set it to standard, you'll probably even save a bit more battery life by doing that. So altogether, the battery life performance on the Reno 13 Pro deserves an A+ grade. Now, wrapping up my thoughts about the Reno 13 Pro, this phone actually really impressed me and surprised me in a lot of ways. It isn't quite a flagship killer, but it's heading towards that territory, and there are a lot of things that I really like about this phone. In terms of value, it really depends on which region you are in, but I really feel like this phone is a really nice premium phone that a lot of people should consider. And for my final grading, it gets an 83 out of 100 or an A- grade, so depending on which region you are in and the pricing of the Reno 13 Pro, this could be one of the best recommendations for value for money, and is an all-rounder in pretty much every aspect. And There are only a couple things that I don't like about it. No wireless charging and the ultra-wide camera isn't that good. But if those things don't matter to you, this is a great choice. Alright, so that wraps up this video. I'm Upwards. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next video.